Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar on inbound and outbound marketing and activating the dual power of those two marketing strategies. 2019 is fast approaching. We're already almost in the second week of December, and so as we start to think about our strategies for next year, we should refresh ourselves on the balance that we want between our inbound and outbound and how that's going to benefit our customer lifecycle and our buyer's journey. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the platform, I just want to give you a really quick tutorial. This is the ON24 webinar platform. The screens that you see are all available to change in size. So if you pull the bottom corner, you can make the PowerPoint bigger or smaller or move it around that platform. There's contact information for Karen and myself, and you can access that to reach out to us at any time. If you have questions or after the webinar you think of something that you need help with, we're always available. And then in addition to that, if you have any questions during the webinar, there's a little Q&A box on the left-hand side, and you can enter them in there. We'll answer them as we go along. I also like to mention I put in the follow-up emails when people register that the audio for this is only coming through your computer audio. So just a reminder, if you're having any sort of technical difficulties, shoot me a chat and I'll help you figure it out. But there is a little volume mover on the left-hand side there that you can help adjust the computer volume in the ON24 platform. So let's get started. I am your host, Janine Ponarelli. I'm the Director of Marketing at Technology Advisors. And with us today is Karen Casey, the Senior Manager of Channel Enablement at Outbound. Karen has great expertise in this area, and she will be discussing a lot of the major points about inbound and outbound that define what those modern definitions are and how we can put all the best practices of each to work for us. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Karen to get started, and we'll start educating ourselves on some new policies.
Thanks, Janine, and hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. We really want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to our presentation, Inbound and Outbound, Activate Your Dual-Powered Marketing, where we're going to be taking a look at how to effectively integrate both inbound and outbound strategies into your marketing plan. So for me, this is actually one of my favorite topics because I frequently get asked which method is better. But the reality is it really shouldn't be an either-or decision in today's marketing world. You really need to embrace both strategies in order to see the return on the marketing campaigns that you're running. We have quite a bit to cover, so I'm going to jump right into our agenda. I'm going to start with defining each strategy and highlighting some of the major characteristics of how those definitions have changed as digital marketing has evolved. I'll also take a look at some of the tactics and best practices associated with each strategy, and I'll give you a few tips for how to integrate both strategies into a cohesive plan. And lastly, we'll provide a framework for how to evaluate and measure the success of your efforts. As well, I just want to point out, what Janine said is, if you do have questions, feel free to put those into the chat box, and we'll try to leave a little bit of time at the end. But as I always say whenever I'm doing these, if we run out of time or we need to have some offline conversations, I'm always happy to do that after the session. All right, so let's jump in. What is inbound marketing? We define inbound as activities that are designed to attract the attention of customers and prospects with the purpose of giving them a reason to come to you. So in the context of comparing inbound and outbound, inbound is commonly referred to as pull marketing and outbound as push marketing because you're using a number of tactics and great content to pull the attention of your prospects to your brand. You're essentially giving your prospects the freedom to determine their own path to purchase, but you're leaving little breadcrumbs or markers along the way that allow them to find you. So while many businesses use inbound to build brands and improve customer retention, it's used most effectively as a top-of-funnel tactic. It's really a great concept. You create a lot of value around your brand, and you're compelling customers to come to you. And according to a stat by the Earnest Agency, 9 out of 10 buyers say that when they're ready to buy, they'll find you. So you might be asking yourself, how are they going to find you? You can effectively implement an inbound strategy a number of ways, but some of the most effective tools in an inbound strategy are blogging, SEO, social media, content marketing, and review or referral sites. All of these tactics or tools offer a certain level of autonomy that allow prospects to find information on their own. If you execute them properly, all of them will help draw attention to your company, and a little bit later, I will dive a bit deeper into the best practices for all of these. Now, whether you're new to inbound or are just looking for ways to improve, most businesses today see the opportunity in inbound marketing as the role it plays in relation to outbound marketing. Outbound in the past has always been about pushing your message to mass audiences. It's been this one-size-fits-all approach that really represents that Mad Men era of marketing. You spent enormous amounts of money on one campaign, and you pushed it to as many people as you could, trying to get the most exposure possible. It's even been referred to as interruption marketing because the message really didn't have any element of personalization or relevance to your prospects, and some of the tactics, like the dreaded cold calling, interrupted the lives of your prospects. Unfortunately, this has given outbound marketing a bad reputation, but with the infusion of technology, the tactics for this strategy have evolved, and so has the way that we can define it. Today, we can define outbound marketing as a push of relevant messaging to known personas that address their pain points and interests. They are staying top of mind in the decision-making process. Using behavior profiling and activity history, marketers now, more so than ever, have the ability to create personalized messages with relevant information, and they can reach their prospects on a much more personal level. So I want to give a little bit of context to this, and I want to use email as an example. I'm sure we've all been in these situations, but there's nothing more frustrating than when you receive an email that doesn't apply to you. It's clogging up your inbox, it's sucking up precious seconds of your day, you're just frustrated. But it becomes a completely different story if you're receiving information that is relevant, timely, and interesting. So for example, if I download a white paper on a website and then receive an email from the organization thanking me for the download and suggesting other pieces of content that relate to what I've just downloaded, I'm much more likely to view the additional content than I would have if I was just getting a blanketed promo message for content that has nothing to do with my interests. So that is a little bit on email. And email is by far one of the most effective tools for achieving return on investment and for connecting with your prospects on a more personal and customized level. But there are other digital outbound tactics, such as retargeting ads, video, account-based marketing, and mobile. And of course, there are some non-digital tactics as well that can be very effective, such as direct mail, TV, radio, and phone. I'm going to cover these, all of these tools, I would say, in more detail a little bit later, specifically on the digital side and how they can be used to connect with your prospects using timely and relevant information. Now, before I do that, though, I want to provide some additional context, in relation to today's presentation. We are seeing these shifts in how we define inbound and outbound because there has been a shift in the buyer's journey. So you can see here on the screen what we call the buyer's journey. Technology has evolved, and it's going to continue to do so. So for our buyers, access to information is unlimited, and their access to choice is also unlimited. Essentially, your prospects are in the driver's seat, and they're directing their own buying journey. It's no longer about saturating a market. It's about intelligent targeting. It's about being able to understand where your buyers are on their journey so you can influence their next steps in hopes of becoming one of the choices they consider. So yes, you might be saying to yourself, that means the consumers are in control, but that's okay, because guess what? Now the consumers can do a lot of the work for you. You don't need to canvas everywhere anymore. You just need to be able to track where customers are at in their buyer journey and be prepared to respond when necessary. So I have a couple of stats to back this up. According to Demand Gen report, 78% of consumers start the buying process with a web search, and 50% turn to social media and peer reviews to influence their buying decisions. These directly relate to the first two stages of this new buyer's journey, which is attract and capture. And this is inbound marketing at its core. you're generating awareness of your product or service, and you're using the momentum of that awareness to capture the prospect's attention and the information to turn them into known contacts. And even in these first two stages, modern marketers are using outbound marketing tactics intelligently to get their messages in front of the right buyer with the right content. I love showing this view of the buyer's journey because it really is helping illustrate the point on why you should not just choose inbound or outbound marketing strategies. Building a relationship with customers should be a two-way street. It should incorporate both push and pull. So an analogy here. Imagine a single guy entering the dating scene and just waiting at the bar for the perfect partner to show up. He's in the right place, he looks nice, he's attractive. Sure, there's a chance that that perfect partner is going to materialize in the bar seat next to him, but our single guy or gal has a much better chance at starting a healthy relationship if they're actively seeking out people on dating sites and sending messages and socializing and introducing themselves. So basically, two ways of communication, twice the opportunity. Now, this is especially true in the later parts of the relationship. So imagine a relationship where one partner was always the one to call or text first, and the other just waited to be contacted. Probably not the best approach. Same thing with your prospects and customers. To effectively market to your prospects throughout their journey, all the way from attract through expand, you have to adopt outbound strategies to help move those prospects through to the nurture, convert, and expand stages. This is where your outbound strategies are really coming to life. Outbound is supporting the concept of keeping you top of mind throughout your journey, and you'll probably amass a very top-heavy funnel if you're focusing on inbound alone and don't have an outbound strategy to help your prospects progress through their journey. A few more stats that I have here on the screen. According to Gleanster research, 50% of leads are qualified, but they're not yet ready to buy. And companies that excel at lead nurturing generate 50% more sales-ready leads at a 33% lower cost, according to Forrester. So you can see that just because you've attracted new prospects doesn't mean they're ready to buy. You have to nurture them with outbound strategies in order to really see the return from your inbound tactics. So now that I've illustrated the value of using this dual-powered marketing strategy approach, let's dive into the pros and cons of each and the specific tactics for each strategy. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Deneen for a few minutes.
Thank you, Karen. So as Karen was saying, the combination of push and pull with inbound and outbound is important to really activate your dual-powered marketing. But that balance may not always be a 50-50 split. So you have to think about how does that apply to your business specifically, your industry specifically, and your marketing goals specifically. So I just wanted to take a moment to go through some pros and cons of inbound and outbound just to get our juices flowing as we start to think about what the balance of those two is with our own personal marketing strategies. So inbound is actually responsible for 90% of clicks on websites. And as you can see, what Moz is doing here in this image that we're showing, they're comparing inbound marketing with the idea of interruption marketing. So, when you're interrupting basically someone, that is more tactics that tend to be associated with outbound-esque strategies. But the inbound marketing is just what Karen was saying, the blogging, the public speaking, the social media. You're earning attention organically. They are seeking you out. Maybe they're doing that web search for whatever product they're looking for, and they see a blog about that product that your website put out, or they have a question and your blog title has as an answer to that question. So that's how the inbound is drawing those people in. The pros of inbound is it's cheap. It's less expensive than outbound marketing because you can use a lot of it can be executed using the tools you already have. Social media, if you have a website at your company, your blog, word of mouth, or if you do a live event and you do like a free workshop or something like that. It also initiates two-way conversation, and that again tags on what Karen was saying. You want it to be a two-way conversation. You don't just want to talk at them. You want to talk with them. So if they interact with you and they have a dialogue about something that intrigues them, they'll participate and they'll become more engaged. You also notice that inbound is more sustainable, and that's long term. So inbound takes longer to see results at the get-go, but the long-term yields are higher. It can grow exponentially, and it's a little more scalable than outbound. Outbound is scalable too, but with inbound, as your assets grow, you're attracting this recurring and constantly growing audience. So if I go back to that blog idea that I was talking about earlier, that's where, let's say I've been searching the web about a specific topic and you keep coming up, different blog articles from your site. I'm starting to view you as a thought leader on this topic, and that is planting the seed in my mind for the future. If maybe I really need some professional help with whatever it is that I'm searching, you're going to come to mind first. And then also, inbound leads tend to be warmer. If they're impressed by your content, they follow you on social media, the chances are higher that they're going to reach out to you when they're ready to buy. The cons to that, as I mentioned earlier, it takes a little bit more time to see results. It also takes a little bit more time to develop the content and optimize it. Obviously, writing blogs and white papers and doing videos and all those things, those take a lot of effort. So that is a con, but the yields that it gives you are so worthwhile. And then there's less immediate volume. And again, that goes back to taking more time to see results, but you see that long-term value. So then if we talk about outbound, pros of outbound is a little bit faster. Many SEO firms will tell you if you fix your SEO on your website, it takes about 4 to 6 months to start seeing results. Timelines for content marketing and social media marketing are very similar. You get better targeting options sometimes because instead of you being that guy at the bar that's waiting for somebody to come sit next to you and you're not really sure who that person is, if you'll relate to them, if you'll have anything in common, you are targeting people based on your choices. You're choosing the targets. So on inbound, you're kind of just relying on the individuals to find you, and you don't know very much about them when they first come in. The cons of outbound, it's a little bit more expensive, so you're paying for mailers, you're paying for airtime on the radio or TV commercials or pay-per-click ads. And that's not always easy for smaller companies, and that's where that balance of the pros and the balance of inbound and outbound come in. Some companies want to put a lot of investment into their outbound, and they put a little bit less investment into the inbound, and some companies balance a little bit more in the other direction. But your hope, no matter what, is that you can get people interested in what you're saying. So social media and blogging, those are inexpensive ways to kind of put your name out there and prove your business expertise in sort of an outbound way, but without having to spend a lot of money. And actually, well, blogging is more inbound, but social media, at least if you're trying to push a message, you can push that through social media. And then the other thing with outbound is, people can tune you out. Unfortunately, you're feeding people a message that they haven't asked for. Again, bouncing off of what Karen said earlier, if you get an email in your inbox and has nothing to do with what you care about, you're not going to read it. You're going to throw it out. You're going to put it in your junk folder. So the hope is that you're targeting the correct people with outbound, and that's part of working on the strategy of the outbound to make sure that the people you're hitting are actually interested in what you're saying. Inbound is in front of them as well, but their own curiosity is what's propelling them to make the next click. So I want to hand it over to Karen to talk about inbound blogging.
Thanks, Janine. That was super helpful. Hopefully everyone else found that very useful as well. So now I want to dive into the inbound tactics. So the first one we'll start with is blogging. So I'm sure many of you know this already, but blogging is a proven technique for attracting visitors to your website. It allows you to build a relationship, and a well-written blog offers a variety of benefits to your entire inbound strategy. Most importantly, it can help establish your company as knowledgeable and helpful, and someone a prospect would want to engage with in a business relationship, which of course, is very important when you're, starting any relationship. Blogging is also going to help improve your organic search results, especially when you're able to maintain a frequent and steady cadence of posts. My advice, or the thing I'd like to say is, the frequency you should post is different for every business, but the most important part here is to set a cadence and follow it. And lastly, blogging will help stimulate social sharing, which spreads your knowledge and puts you in front of new prospects. In fact, according to Marketing Sherpa, 81% of marketers view blogs as an effective marketing tool. So, even though there are some undisputed benefits, as I mentioned before, managing a blog can be a challenge. It's hard to keep up with that need for fresh and high quality material, especially if you're relying on volunteers in your company to provide those articles. So I always recommend to assign some job responsibility to employees for blog strategy and content, maybe also develop a calendar. And if you have holes in your blogging schedule, don't be afraid to use freelance writers to help fill those gaps. Now on this next slide, since blogging can be challenging, I've got 7 tips that will help get you started. So first, create an editorial calendar. This is going to help plan your blog posts around the rest of your marketing communications, like maybe you're doing webinars or trade shows, or you have a product launch coming up. It also will help you prioritize what needs to be written first and will keep you organized. Second thing, include social sharing buttons. This is very important in an inbound strategy because it helps your posts reach a larger audience by encouraging your readers to pass the content along to others. So you want to make sure that the sharing features are prominent and you make it very easy for someone to complete. Third, you want to update the blog at least weekly. This, of course, is going to seem tedious, but it's really going to help you reach optimal organic search results. It's going to provide a huge boost to your SEO strategy, which we'll talk about more here in a bit. 4, keep a consistent blog schedule. Again, the goal of inbound is to give your prospects a reason to come to you, and you can't do that if they're getting dead airwaves. You have to keep it consistent so your readers' expectations are fulfilled and they're building trust with your brand. Next, use keywords that match your blog copy. This, of course, relates to your SEO strategy, but again, we want to make sure you're fulfilling the expectations of your readers. So we want to make sure the keywords you are targeting for the post actually relate to the content. The volume of traffic coming to your blog isn't very useful if your readers' expectations are not met and they don't find it relevant. 6th tip, make your content valuable to your reader. You want to offer as much useful and educational information as possible and really try to avoid any self-promotion. Of course, there can be exceptions to this rule, like if you have a new product release or you have a lot of good PR circulating, you can definitely write a post about that. But you want to make sure that you're positioning the messaging so that it is informative and it's showing the value for the reader and it's not really that heavy sales pitch. And last but not least, add a call to action. This is a subtle way to help you actually generate some leads from the blog. You might add in a gated offer to some content that is relevant to the post so that they can expand their learning and knowledge of a particular topic. Now, I mentioned a couple times in my tips there for blogging, SEO. So the key to success in online marketing at its most basic form is to capture the attention of the masses that rely on organic search. You want to make sure your content, the best answer when people are searching for information to an issue or problem that your product or service helps solve. And these days, quality is really everything. In the past, content with keywords and, there used to be tricks that you could do to fool search engines. Well, Google is getting smarter and the algorithms have changed, and as a result, there's now less of an emphasis on mastering the traditional tricks of SEO and more emphasis than ever before on the fundamentals of good writing. So this means you can get further with search simply by writing with clarity and elegance. So it's really all about relevance and quality over quantity. You need to build a robust website which serves educational content, which answers the questions and serves the needs of your prospects. The golden rule for SEO as it stands today is to write for people and not for search engines, which is different than maybe what we had done in the past. So here are a couple quick tips to optimize your website for search. Number 1, know your audience and the language they use. Think of the words and phrases that your audience uses throughout the content on your pages. Remember that your audience is the one entering the question in the search engine, so you really have to put yourself in their shoes and ask yourself, how would I search for a solution for this problem? And don't be afraid to ask others to get other opinions. Tip number 2, write better content. This will help keep visitors on your page longer, and the search engines will recognize that. You should also pay attention to the structure of your content and keep paragraphs short and break up content. 3, include title tags. Write your title tags to indicate exactly what's on the page. Use keywords early in the title and keep the tag between 8 and 55 characters. And that does include spaces. 4, use responsive design. I can't stress the importance of this enough. According to eMarketer, tablets and smartphones drive 39% of paid search clicks in North America, so you're really missing out on traffic if you're not optimizing your site for multiple screen sizes. You need to make sure that your website displays correctly and is super easy to navigate across different screen sizes and devices. And finally, tip number 5, set a canonical URL. This is really just going to help reduce any issues you may have with duplicate content. All right, moving on to social media. So consumers and businesses alike are using social media to connect with brands. According to Forrester's Social Technographics report, 100% of business decision makers are using social media for work purposes. So an active presence on social media is mandatory today. You might be asking, though, where do you begin? The first thing is you need to start by identifying the networks where your customers are expecting to find you. So if you're selling B2B, this is certainly LinkedIn and possibly Facebook or Twitter. If you're selling to consumers, you should probably begin with Facebook and then consider, Twitter or Pinterest. Then you need to develop a library of compelling content. People are not going to pay attention to you on social media unless you have something interesting to tell them. You really need to develop that content strategy before you can begin your social media program. So you can pull content from your blogs and white papers, ebooks, videos, reports. You can also use customer reviews, things like quotes from your executives or team members, and even links to helpful resources. This might even be from your competitors that's going to help your audience find answers. And one of the more obvious uses for social media is for PR purposes. So an example of that would be using social to promote a live event or trade show, or announcing a product launch, or maybe a key new hire for your company. The options for social media are really endless, but the point here that I'm trying to make is that you're providing a method for your prospects to connect with you and to build trust. Now, just because you're posting on social channels doesn't mean that your prospects are always going to engage with your posts. So here are 5 tips that might help. 1 is develop a tone that's familiar and comfortable with your audience, which also should really represent the style, and I would also say the culture of your company. 2, pose questions that stimulate engagement and responses. This is going to help prompt them to share, which is what you want to do. You want to get in front of as many people as possible. Tip number 3, and I've said this obviously before with the blogging, is to maintain a steady cadence of posts, whether it be daily, weekly, or monthly. You really don't want to go hot or cold. Set that expectation and keep with it. Next, use multimedia to help keep your posts stimulating by providing a variety of different images and texts and videos and infographics. All of us also engage in social media, and if we're bored, we disengage quite quickly. And tip number 5, push the envelope. Or basically, don't be afraid to push it a little, depending on, of course, what industry you're in. Social networks are expected to be freewheeling environments, so try something out of the ordinary for your company. Maybe it's a contest, or sharing a day in the life of an employee or something like that, or maybe even a customer. Get them involved. All right, so enough on social media. Let's go on to the last inbound tactic that we're going to cover today, and that is content marketing. So customer education has long been an effective sales and marketing approach, but now buyers are researching products and solutions online well in advance of directly engaging with the seller. So what that means is marketers must provide plenty of information both online and off to inform buyers and to gain their trust, so you're staying top of mind for when they actually are ready to buy. According to the Earnest Agency, I'll quote them again, 78% of buyers are hungry for information around their business challenges. And it's our job as marketers to provide it. And by creating content that helps answer their questions, you can move your prospects closer to becoming customers. So content can come in a variety of forms, videos, images, emails, ebooks, white papers, and web pages, to name a few. But the key characteristic of content marketing is that it serves some business purpose through education and information versus persuasion. So like I said before, you want to avoid that salesy pitch at all costs. Now, despite the value of content marketing, it is still a relatively hard strategy for marketers to adapt and master. A recent study by the Content Marketing Institute shows that while most marketers are using content marketing tactics, few believe that they're actually using it well. So because of that, and as I'm sure you can guess here, kind of moving on with the format, here are a few tips for creating a content marketing strategy. So tip number one is to analyze your customer's buying process. So earlier today, we briefly discussed the 5 stages. They are attract, capture, nurture, convert, and expand. It's really important when you're putting together your content marketing strategy to consider each of these stages, because you need to make sure you have content that speaks to each of your personas throughout the different stages of their buying journey. Which brings us to number 2. You need to understand and segment your audience. This is commonly referred to as developing buyer personas. This is an effective way to uncover who your target customers are, which helps identify what topics your content should be covering. So you can start by asking yourself, and maybe even your sales team, a few questions like, who are our ideal prospects and customers? And how do they go about making buying decisions? What are the questions they're asking? What are their pain points? What are their common objections? What do they perceive as valuable? Now, when we get into outbound tactics, being able to segment your audience by persona is going to make a huge impact. Tip number 3, identify the right content formula. To do this, you really need to make sure that your content is doing different things at the different stages of the buyer's journey. So for example, in the attract stage, your content needs to generate interest in the company and establish yourself as a thought leader. In capture, you want to stimulate purchase consideration and position your company as a provider that they're going to want to work with. In nurture, you want to continue to provide informative content that helps educate how you can solve your persona's particular pain point. Then when you're moving into that convert stage, you're wanting to provide content that shows a great customer experience. So, a testimonial or a customer review would be great at this stage. And then expand, you're moving to that customer marketing mode. So you really want to make them a brand advocate and educate them on how to use your product to its full potential. Lastly, tip number 4 conveniently coincides with the rule of 4. The rule of 4 states that any piece of content can be repurposed up to 4 times. So for example, we could use this webinar and turn it into an ebook and eventually a blog post and maybe even into an infographic to show how inbound and outbound strategies can be combined. What we have to remember is that different people consume content in different ways. So by providing the same content in different formats, you can really be sure to hit as many people as possible and to connect with them. So now that you've captured your prospect's attention, the landing page is where everything comes together and your inbound efforts really pay off. Your landing pages are where, basically those serve as that bridge, I guess, between inbound and outbound. Because driving prospects just to your website isn't going to be enough. You have to give them a reason and an opportunity to engage with you on an ongoing basis. So you really want to make sure that your landing pages are optimized for conversions so you can capture their information and begin engaging with them with outbound tactics. So here on our screen, we have an example of an act-on landing pages, of an act-on landing page, which invites prospects to take a video tour of our platform. Now, a few things I want to point out here. You want to make sure that every inbound call to action has a dedicated landing page. So this would include SEO, your blog, and social promotions. Basically, anywhere that you're requesting a click or a visit to a particular page. So if you have a lot of ebooks, there should be a landing page for each.
Karen, did we lose you? Okay, well, let me see if I can pick up where Karen left off here she might be experiencing some technical difficulties. So what was she talking about? She was talking about the landing pages and capturing their information. And so I think what she was probably going to get into was talking. Oh, there you are.
I'm
Hello?
back. I'm back. Sorry, had a
Okay.
small technical difficulty. Yeah, sorry, everyone. I apologize. It happens sometime, but I'm back. So my apologies.
No
Yes, I
worries.
think where I was
Carry
at.
on.
Yeah, no. Sorry to give everyone a scare there. I'm sure everybody was like, "Oh, great," or maybe you were thinking that, "Great, I got a 30 minutes back into my day." But we'll jump right back in. So what I was saying is that there needs to be a landing page for each, ebook. I was giving the example of an ebook, and if you have a lot of ebooks, that there should be a landing page for each ebook you offer. You also want to make sure that your landing pages have forms so you can capture your prospect's information. And keep in mind that the length of those forms should really vary on the type of call to action you're requesting to reduce the friction for your prospects so they're not going to abandon and just decide they don't want to fill out the form. So a good example of this is asking someone to sign up for a newsletter versus asking someone to sign up for a webinar. So you really only need a prospect's email address to send out the newsletter. So you want to keep the fields on that form as minimal as possible. But for a webinar, you can get away with asking for more information, especially if it pertains to the webinar topic. So if you're promoting a webinar on the benefits of integrating technology platforms to your CRM system, there'd be less friction in providing an answer to asking what CRM they use because it's relevant to the topic. You should also consider conducting A/B testing to help improve and optimize your conversions. So this is going to help you determine, what are the best headlines and body copy and layout and colors and images and such. So now I want to transition into Outbound. As I mentioned before, I want to briefly touch on all the digital tactics, but I really want to focus on the benefits of email and nurturing specifically. So first up, email. Now, if you're like most people, judging by the size of your inbox, it's easy to think of email as spam. But email is still really a marketing powerhouse. It's one of the most effective methods of communication in terms of return on investment. And according to the Economist Intelligence Unit, email is ranked #1 as the preferred method of communication by consumers. But you have to remember, competing for sustained attention in the cluttered inbox is no fun. So today I want to focus on 2 of the best methods for email marketing, which are behavior-triggered emails and automated programs or lead nurturing. A trigger email is essentially an email that is triggered by an action or even a lack of action. Basically, you're triggering an email to be sent out to one person based on something that they have done or haven't done. So maybe they visited a key page of your website that indicates a product interest. Maybe they abandoned a shopping cart, or you notice that they've been viewing the same page, over and over and over. But remember, every business is different, so it's really important for you to look at how your audience is different and how your prospects are exploring your products. So to help you get started, you should look at where your prospects are self-identifying interest and product needs. Is it a specific topic they keep viewing in different formats? Is it a specific video they keep coming back to? And then after you figure that out, identify where along the process they have to make a decision to either proceed or not proceed onto the next phase of that buying journey. So sometimes it's as simple as, a shopping cart or checkout process. But if you're in the B2B world, it can be a bit more complex. So for example, is it when they're on a form to set an appointment with a sales rep or to view a demo? Or is it when they're viewing, say, the pricing page on your website? You just have to, take some time and, think things through of when they have to make a decision in their purchase journey to interact or not to interact. And then once you've identified those areas, you can create messages that directly relate to your prospect's interests and trigger the emails for the exact moment they've taken the actions you've identified as your trigger. And the beauty of that is that you're using their digital body language as the basis for forming the messaging to prompt action. So here on the screen, we actually have an example of that we use here at Outbound. We have a list of prospects that we're actively watching and trying to get to engage. So we're watching that list, and any time that anyone on that list visits key pages on our website, the message is triggered. And it's a very simple message. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just saying, hey, you peeked at our website. You should be taking a deeper look at Outbound. Here's a quick video. So this has been really successful for us with over a 50% open rate. And that's honestly not surprising when you look at stats out there. According to eMarketer, trigger emails statistically have higher open rates and higher click-through rates than traditional one-off email messages because you're triggering that message when the prospect is actively engaged. The next type of email that I want to talk about is nurturing. So let's start defining why you would need a lead nurturing program, which is essentially a series of emails that are triggered at specific points in time. 50% of leads, according to Gleanster research, are qualified but are not yet ready to buy. So these are people that are qualified and that at some point are going to make a purchase, but at the time that they come in, they are not yet ready to buy. So lead nurturing is allowing us to gradually warm those leads up over time. If you're in the B2B space, this is something that is particularly relevant because if you have a longer sales cycle, that number might even be higher. Oftentimes, when a lead comes in and they aren't ready to buy, like I said before, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're never going to buy, but you don't want to ignore them. You want to nurture them and warm them up so that then they are ready to buy, that you're staying top of mind and they reach out to you when it comes time for them to buy or to look more closely into a solution. And lead nurturing is not all about making the hard sell. And that is coming later once they're qualified and warmed up. Nurturing is just all about educating and responding to their needs and building trust through the series of emails that you're providing. So if you're sending highly targeted messages based on different layers of data you're collecting, like segmenting on buyer personas and the different stages they're at in their purchasing journey, you can do that very, very effectively. The best advice I can give for lead nurturing is really to map it out. So you might be noticing a theme here is, it takes a little bit of planning and a little bit of, mapping out. But even if you just do a quick whiteboarding session to visualize the paths that a prospect could take, that could help. On screen here is an example of a sample of a lead nurturing program. And seeing all of this, visually, I think makes it much easier to determine what your decision steps should be and how these leads will reach sales once they've been warmed up and reach a specific score threshold that you've designated as a tipping point for encouraging sales, that they're ready for someone to reach out and have a more serious conversation. Another outbound tactic is retargeting ads. Retargeting is the process of cookiing your prospects and using a retargeting network to serve your ads to prospects on the sites they are visiting. And this even includes websites that are not your own and can even be completely unrelated in terms of topics. I'm sure many of you have even experienced this firsthand, especially this time of year, right, with the holidays coming up. So the benefits to retargeting are pretty great because you can achieve a higher ROI than with regular website ads. This is because you're able to control who you want to see your ads, so you can target your known prospects or even go as far as to serve ads to anyone who has visited a particular page on your site. CMO.com released a stat that showed retargeting to boost ad response by 400%, which is huge. And the reason the engagement is higher is because it's relevant. Even if your prospects know who you are, which they probably do, it's going to take multiple exposures to move a prospect closer to the purchasing action, and retargeting is allowing you to do just that. It gives you that additional exposure that you really need. Video marketing. I want to move to that. In video marketing, I think video is becoming bigger and bigger here today. It's highly versatile because it can be used in both inbound and outbound. And it's gaining popularity as it's more commonly used in ad programs, and it has been an integral part of some organizations' content marketing plans, which we talked about before. But today, I want to focus on how video can be utilized in your outbound strategy to help you increase that engagement with your prospects. So when you think of video marketing at its core, it's designed to help increase education about your product or service and to promote your brand, which is going to be very similar to the goals just in general of outbound marketing. You want to educate and engage known prospects with relevant information so they're more likely to consider you in their decision-making process. According to Digital Sherpa, video helps increase people's understanding of your product or service by 74%, which is why it can make a huge impact in increasing the conversion rates of your outbound tactics. Video can help provide a deeper level of understanding and education, and the viewing activity can tell you a lot about your prospects. So with technology today, you can set up alerts so your sales team is aware when one of your prospects has watched a video, and you can tell exactly how much of that video has been viewed, so sales has a better understanding of how to start their conversation. There are some video hosting platforms that integrate with marketing automation, so all of that video activity also can become something that you can factor into your segmentation. You can also use video to increase engagement with other pieces of content, using maybe like a call to action pop-up in relevant sections of your videos. So for example, say Acton is using a customer testimonial video. Maybe we're doing this, say, in a nurturing program for prospects that are moving from the nurture to convert stage of that buying journey. The customer is explaining how much they love our A/B testing feature. So we can set up a call to action that allows the prospect to download an ebook on how to conduct an A/B test while they're actually viewing the video. So that makes, video is becoming another channel that you can use not only to educate about your product or service, but also as another method to promote other pieces of content to stimulate that engagement. The last outbound tactic that I'm going to touch on today is account-based marketing, which really brings together all of the best practices that we've discussed today. Account-based marketing, for those of you that might not be familiar, is a strategic approach to engaging companies who are similar to some of your top-tier customers. It's similar to developing buyer personas, but instead of focusing on the individuals within a company, you're developing personas for companies to create targeted lists of named accounts. So to do this, you'll look for commonalities like employee size or geographical location or revenue or industry, or even competitors, I would say, to your current customers, and then identify a list of companies that fit the criteria you've selected. And then once you have that targeted account list developed, you can begin focusing all of your marketing activities on engaging these named accounts using all of the tactics and tools that we've discussed today. And if you happen to use third parties to help with lead generation, you can even provide these lists to them so they can begin serving your content to these accounts as well, which will expand your reach. So now that we've covered the tactics or tools for inbound and outbound, how do you successfully integrate the two strategies? The secret to integration is planning across the customer experience. You want to build bridges across media functions and silos and construct your marketing plan as a whole, considering how to move the customer along his or her buying process. So, this presentation wouldn't be complete without my little tips. So here are tips on integrating your inbound and outbound strategies. One is developing a cohesive messaging strategy. So you want to make sure that your messaging retains your brand voice throughout the length of the prospect's buying journey. And at the same time, ensuring the topics and pain points you are addressing are relevant to your prospect's personas and stage of their journey. You also want to make sure that you track key metrics across the journey. You need to consider metrics like cost per leads and lead to sales or lead to opportunity conversion rates, and connect your marketing performance to sales. Tip number 3, plan your content. Content assets are used to attract prospects to your brand, and they make a compelling offer to stimulate response in outbound strategies. You also want to make sure that your sales team has access to your content so your messaging is consistent and they can provide relevant content for some of the discussions that they're having live with prospects. 4, make sure you're considering the source and activity from inbound leads before you're transitioning into outbound tactics. Take the time to meet with your sales team to see which actions from inbound are more likely ready for a conversion and nurture, and serve retargeting ads to the rest of your prospects to warm them up. This is really going to help align sales and marketing teams. And lastly, tip number 5 is develop an integrated mindset. There really should be no walls between inbound and outbound strategies. They both contribute the opportunity to attract, convert, and expand customer relationships. All right, so I know I've probably talked too fast and I've covered a ton of information today, but I'd like to wrap things up with talking about how to measure the success of your efforts. And the best place to start when defining your metrics for success is to set clear goals for what it is you want to do. Do you want to generate leads? Do you want to build awareness? Do you want to increase your lead to opportunity conversions? Or are you focusing more on retaining and expanding the contracts of your existing customer base? So, step one is just clearly defining what your primary goal is, and then map your objectives to the different stages in the buyer's journey, as I've illustrated here on the screen. You can notice here that there's different objectives, and the objectives become more detailed and specific to the particular stage of the buyer's journey. You're more likely to focus on site visitors and traffic in the earlier stages of the funnel, from inbound tactics and conversions and engagement, later in the funnel from outbound efforts. And once you've identified those goals, you'll want to include a time period for when they should be met, and then share these goals and timelines with your entire team so everyone knows what their objectives are and how they can contribute to that overall strategy. So, remember, it's a team effort internally, and it's a team effort with utilizing both inbound and outbound strategies. So with that, I want to thank everyone once again and see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Karen. That was a lot of great information, so thank you so much for presenting that to us. If you agree it was a lot of great information, but maybe you couldn't take notes fast enough, don't worry about it, because I will be sending the full recording of this out to you probably by tomorrow. And then in addition to that, I'll clip out some key segments that Karen discussed in case you just want to look at certain snippets of the presentation, because you really did an excellent job just covering everything that we need to know about inbound and outbound and combining those. So very thorough presentation. We really appreciate it. We do have 2 quick questions, and while we're answering those, just a reminder, if there are any further questions, please type those into the box now so that we can get to them before we have to wrap things up here. So one of the questions actually came in when you were going over the blogging tips, and they were asking, so you had mentioned using calls to actions on your blog. And they said, if you don't have a relevant piece of content to share as your call to action, could you use a call to action like contact us for help with XYZ topic that you're talking about? Or is that too much on that sales pitch side that you were saying we should avoid?
That's a great question. I think it depends. It kind of goes back to that stage in the buyer's journey. So, if they're further along in the stage, and this might be something difficult, and like I said, I'm happy to have a conversation with whoever asked this, offline to kind of give my perspective, but I think it really just goes back to the stage in the buyer's journey. So if they're early in the buyer's journey, it might be a little bit much because they're not ready to, maybe have a conversation with a salesperson or, get a demo, and they might take that as like, oh geez, I just wanted to, learn a little bit. But if they're further along in the process and that, and the blog was, targeted to that audience, then I don't think that a call to action like that would be bad at all.
Okay, and then also we had a question about forms. So, and that's always something that, at least at Technology Advisors too, we've definitely played around with that. We had had longer forms, we had shorter forms, and we were definitely doing the A/B testing, trying to see what converts. This question came in. So have you seen any success asking for demographic information in forms? This is something we've been debating at our company.
I would, to be completely honest, I'd have to ask some of the people, some others here to find out about demographic information. I know one thing that I've heard a lot of good success with, and maybe you play around with this and, add in some demographic questions in this is, doing progressive profiling, where, you have that first form, you capture a few pieces of information, and then the next time that person, because if it's somebody that's really going along that journey, they're going to be engaging with you on multiple times probably. I know that, for example, I'm actually evaluating some software right now, And a few of the companies that I'm talking to, I've registered for multiple webinars. I've downloaded, ebooks and infographics from them on more than one occasion. So a tactic that I feel like that they should have been using with me was on the first form, get the basics. The next one, start asking for like a few additional pieces of information, but that are different so that they can keep adding to the information they get about me. And it's kind of, just educating them more and more about me as a person and as a prospect. So I don't actually know, like I said, off the top of my head of like how successful we've been with getting demographics, but I think that if you, handle it in a way like that, not asking for a ton of information at once, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, somebody wouldn't share that information. And if you want me to get actual, stats from a few other members of my team, I'm happy to follow up. Deneen, if you're able to share who asked that, I'd be happy to, shoot them an email with some additional information. Just let me know.
Sure. And then just to piggyback off of what you're saying, that's also a question that we struggle with sometimes too. And there was one marketer that I was talking to a couple months ago that had a good idea that ties into what you were talking about, Karen, where you ask them a certain number of questions, initially kind of the basics, and then you get deeper and deeper. They did it all in almost one take, though. And so I guess there's different strategies you can implement for that. So what I mean by that is they did like, okay, so I fill out the initial form. Here's my name. Here's my email address. Here's my company. I submit. And then after that, it says, thank you for submitting. Could you answer a couple additional questions? So I feel as the consumer that I already, And I was like, I could see myself as a consumer being like, okay, well, that they made that really easy for me. Sure, I'll answer a couple of these extra questions for you. And they said that they've seen some good conversion rates with that. I have not tried that yet, but it seemed like it could be a good strategy to test out.
I agree. I think a lot of it, not necessarily like maybe with something like that, you do some A/B testing and see what are you getting more information from. I don't know, but yeah, I like it. I haven't really heard about that, but I like that.
All right, so we'll just wrap things up here. I don't see any more questions coming in, but again, as Karen mentioned earlier, and as I mentioned, if you have anything else that you would like some help with, or you think of a question later on today or even next week, our contact information is in this console, so I hope that you'll feel free to reach out to us. Expect an email from me tomorrow, hopefully, with all the clips of the presentation today and additional contact information for Karen and myself in case it gets lost in the meantime. So again, I'd like to thank Karen for her expertise today and sharing this awesome presentation with us. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. Tomorrow's Friday, so woohoo! And has a great start to their 2019 marketing year.
Awesome. Thanks, Deneen, and thank you, everyone.